Welcome to Notable Approvals. I am attorney Amanda Shaffer. Today I have another exciting case to talk about. Before I get to that, quick reminder, don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and all that stuff so you don't miss any of our other live shows. In addition, I want to remind everybody that tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, we will be having, hey Tanya, thanks for joining us. We will be having our fourth episode of Are You Smarter Than a Naturalized Citizen? We have two more immigration attorneys battling it out, one who was born in Illinois, I believe, and the other who was born in Moldova and is a naturalized citizen. So we're very excited. We hope that you all can tune in. If you go to our Facebook page, you can find the event and you can set your reminder so you don't miss out. So today's case is about a client who is a native and citizen of Indonesia. She currently lives in Singapore, which is where she met her now husband, who is a U.S. citizen. He was relocated there for work, and he's been there for a few years. So before they got married, and this is, if you're watching this right now and you're thinking, I might get married to my spouse and either my spouse or myself is going to need or going to want a green card through me or through them, and you haven't gotten married yet, and everybody's in legal status or not in the U.S. at all, then this is a great example of what you should do about contacting an immigration attorney in advance to make sure that you understand exactly what your options are, because there are, and I'm going to go through them now. There are three main options for a person in this situation. So we're talking about somebody who is either in the U.S. in lawful status, outside the U.S. and has no immigration violations, or is inside the U.S. but is going to leave the U.S. So those are the three options I'll briefly discuss while I talk about this case, because that's exactly the conversation I had with these clients before. So instead of them calling me and saying, hey, we got married, what's our best option? And then turning around and saying, oh, I didn't know there was such thing as a fiancé visa. They were able to decide, should I do a fiancé visa or should we get married first? So I'll briefly explain those three options that we talked about. So number one is the fiancé visa. You have to be married to a U.S. Not married, I'm sorry. Your fiance has to be a U.S. citizen, and you cannot be married. So if you traveled to go see your spouse in another country and got married, that option is now off the table. So the way it works is you're engaged, obviously. We submit the petition, it gets approved. Your fiance enters the U.S. and she or he has 90 days to get married to you. If you don't get married in 90 days, your spouse has to, or not, I guess not spouse, your fiance has to leave the country. Once you get married, you then apply for your green card. The benefits of this, it's usually a quicker route in terms of getting your future spouse into the U.S. However, it does require that you meet the person in person at least one time in the last 2 years, which for some people, they're not able to do that. And also, when your significant other enters the U.S., they cannot immediately work legally and travel abroad and return. They have to marry you and then file for the adjustment of status, file for the work permit, file for the travel document. So if you're somebody who is going to need your significant other's income, or your significant other needs to travel for work or whatever the case may be, then that's not going to be the best option for you. And the second option is for somebody who is outside the U.S. So the immigrant is outside the U.S. And both the second and the third option require you to get married before you file any paperwork with immigration. And you can get married anywhere in the world where it's legal to marry. So you get married outside the U.S., and the U.S. citizen can live outside the U.S. or inside the U.S. It depends. Now, there's often issues when the U.S. citizen lives inside the U.S. and the non-U.S. citizen lives outside the U.S. And although they've seen each other, they've never lived together. That could be a hard situation to do a marriage petition in this way. But it'll come down to the evidence, which we'll talk about in a little. So if you want to go this route, you're doing an I-130 marriage petition. You get married wherever you get married. Your spouse is going to be outside the U.S. the entire process for the I-130 approval, just like with the fiancé visa. Once the I-130 gets approved, then your spouse is going to go do the visa interview, just like with the fiancé visa. And the big difference here is that your spouse is also filling out an immigrant visa application and getting an immigrant visa. So unlike the fiancé visa, when your spouse enters the U.S., he or she will automatically be a green card holder. They mail it, they say within 90 days. I think it's usually much faster. So what's nice about this option is that you're done. I mean, you're done with this part of the process, that your spouse will enter the U.S. and already be a green card holder, can already work legally, travel abroad. And so there's nothing further to worry about until, other steps in the immigration process. Ooh, excuse me. So it is a nice option. It usually takes the I-130 process in general, whether it's the second or what I'm about to talk to as a third option, usually, at least historically, has taken longer, much longer than the fiancé petition. And it does require evidence of a joint life. Whereas the fiancé petition, you're basically saying, hey, we've either met a couple of times or many times, we are in love, we intend to marry one another, but we don't have a joint life yet together. Maybe you do, and we can show that. But if you don't, that's okay, because you haven't had that chance yet. You're basically asking the government now for that chance to bring your fiance here and start that life together. Whereas with the marriage petition, you've already started a life together. You may be separated. That's okay. That happens. We've done plenty. We've had where spouses have been separated 10 years because of a previous immigration violation or something. That's okay. But you have to just be able to show, if you don't have a joint lease and a joint cell phone bill and a joint bank account, how are you supporting one another? How are you communicating? And that's the type of thing we show. So that's if you're outside the U.S. And then the third option is if you legally enter the U.S. with a visa, a non-immigrant visa, and then you do an adjustment of status to get a green card. This option is, I'm not going to get into the complexity of this option, but what I will say is, if the most common that we see is someone who enters with a B2 visitor visa or a student visa, and then they meet somebody, fall in love, get married, and then they can apply, their spouse can petition for them, apply for the green card, and they don't have to leave the country if their spouse is a U.S. citizen. If their spouse is a permanent resident, then you need to be in lawful status when you submit your green card application, or you will not be eligible. So that gets complicated. I don't want to go more into that, but essentially that's the option for somebody who marries a U.S. citizen who is in the U.S. or marries a permanent resident in the U.S. and is still in lawful status and can maintain that lawful status until filing the green card application, and then you do not have to leave the U.S. And that process, people like it because they don't have to leave the U.S. You can get a work permit, a travel document. It's taking a long time right now because of COVID. I mean, it all is, because it's not just the I-130 petition. You have the green card, and you have to go to your interview. The I-130 filed when someone's outside the U.S., they approve it first, saying we believe it's a real marriage, but they still have to go to the visa interview to get the immigrant visa, and are going to have to bring updated evidence of the marriage and show there's still, a real relationship. And we've dealt with a lot of cases where the approval was revoked at the embassy because they go to the embassy together and they can't answer any questions or have no evidence of their good faith marriage. So although it gets approved before the interview, it doesn't mean that's the end of the inquiry. It doesn't let you off the hook there. In fact, you can be in the U.S. already on your green card, and if they have real evidence to show that you committed fraud lying about your marriage, you can be in a lot of trouble. So Of course, I never advocate false marriages. It's against the law and it's wrong and ruins the system. So I'm not trying to give anybody a workaround here. I'm just being honest about what the process is. So those were the three options we discussed with our clients. We went through all the timing to the best we could. The cost is pretty comparable because it's very similar amount of work, and then we talked about their particular circumstances, why one was better than the other. The husband, he has a job right now, and he can get transferred back to the U.S. The wife also had a job, and she wanted to continue to work. So that she didn't want to come to the U.S. and not be able to work for a little, and they weren't ready to come back to the U.S. And then COVID hit. And that, I think, for them, because she was going to come and visit his family and meet them, but COVID hit and there were no more visitor visas available. So they decided just to, get married and start the process. I don't know how long, unfortunately. Let me tell you about the next step in the process. Now that it's approved, what they have to wait for the approval to get transferred from the USCIS to the National Visa Center, or the NVC. That takes, give or take, 3 weeks. It's supposed to. I have a client I'm working on right now where, for some reason, it's been over a year. I don't know why, but basically, National Visa Center gets the approval, contacts us, contacts the client, and says, "Hey, we have your approval. We're ready for the next steps," which involve paying fees, more applications, documents, etc. That's not the interesting part of this case right here. The evidence is, which I'll get to. And then once they have all that, it then finally gets transferred to the embassy in your country of citizenship or nationality. In this case, it would be Indonesia. And she would then go with her husband to the visa interview, and all goes well. She gets that visa, and then she can come to the U.S., enters the U.S. as a permanent resident. Done. If you're wondering if they are married for less than 2 years at the time of the visa interview, then she will be getting a conditional green card, which is only valid for 2 years, and she will have to file a petition to remove conditions on residency within the 90-day period before that 2-year green card expires. So, like I said, what I found interesting about this case. Number one, 3 months is insane. I mean, even if they've shifted resources without us, we wouldn't know if they did, but I know they do that. They shift resources to address backlogs. We filed this in January, and it's March. So that's really quick. I think this is the quickest I-130, at least in memory, a recent memory, that has gotten approved, because they were taking a year plus for a long time, especially with COVID. This one didn't require an interview, so that makes it slightly easier. But I think it was partly because of how strong the evidence was. So let's talk about that. So I always say, when I talk about evidence with clients, that I give them a list of things we've compiled over the years from different things we've submitted for different clients. And we tell them, look, it's not an exhaustive list. If you have something else that you think shows that you have a real relationship, by all means, let me see it. There's no right or wrong. Well, I mean, there can be wrong, but there's not one thing that you have to show, or certain things to show that you have a bona fide relationship. So in this case, these clients had some of those documents that are very common that we submit. Like, obviously, their marriage certificate. They've never been married before, so no need for a divorce. They had a joint lease. Actually, it was his lease, and then she was added on, which is perfectly fine. She moved in after. Then here's where, then we had the joint cell phone account, which is great. We had a joint, the petitioner's retirement account, which listed his wife as a primary beneficiary. Then we had the petitioner's employment benefits, which listed his wife as a dependent. All great things. We had booking confirmations and e-tickets. They took a couple of trips together. And then we had some photographs from their wedding, singular, and other events that they had gone to, like other weddings and stuff like that. And so all that stuff definitely I've submitted countless times for different clients. Then it got a little interesting. And this is also might be because of where being in Singapore, they do things a little differently, which is, again, great, perfectly fine. So we had a joint air conditioner service agreement. I've never seen one of those before. You may have. It might not be a Singapore thing. It might just not be a US thing. But that was interesting, when you're thinking of what are the types, like maybe you can't get a bank account because you don't have a social security number. Like in this situation, they didn't have a bank account yet. They were waiting to the US to open one. So, and I think in Singapore, I think they tried to open it, but I forgot what the reason was they couldn't. But anyways, point is, think about, well, what else can we do together, put our names on together, or have we done that will show that, we're financially responsible for? That's what it comes down to, because if you break the air conditioner, both names are on there, you both are going to be responsible for paying it back. That's what USCIS wants to see. So the joint air conditioner service agreement was interesting. Then they had a joint application for use of a cargo lift. They had two of those, for a move out and a move in. I think it was when she moved out and moved in with him. And again, I've never seen that before, and that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist or it's not good evidence. It just means that it's always a good idea to think outside the box of things you have with both your names on it, things that both of you are financially responsible for. And the reason I'm sure they do that is because if you damage anything in your move in or move out, you got to pay for it. And it was even stronger proof, like, yeah, a lease set has your name. Technically it says you live there, but you don't have, you're not providing always other evidence to show I've actually moved in. So this was for her old place and her new place, showing she moved out and then moved in there. So that was really a good one. And then finally, although we definitely submitted things with dogs and cats, this was our first joint hamster purchase receipt that we submitted. And you know what? An animal is an animal. They're both responsible. If they were to get divorced, I'm sure they would need a provision about who keeps the hamster. But the point is that it's a sweet thing that they did together. It's not necessarily about financial responsibility for that, but it's to show, like, look, we put both of our names on it because we're both, I'm the mom, you're the dad, we're raising this hamster together, and I think it's really sweet, and it really is unique. And I think when you have evidence sometimes that's a little more unique, it actually paints a little different picture of the couple in a good way, because it gives more personality. It says more about their lives. So, like I said, this case was approved super fast. It made me look great. I really wish that all my cases get approved this fast. Fingers crossed. But the key to take home from this case, two main things. Number one, if you are in the position where you can plan ahead with immigration, before you do anything, as in getting married, going to another country, applying for anything, speak to an experienced immigration attorney and make sure you understand what your options are and how they'll affect your particular circumstances. This is where consults come in, and they're really helpful because you may think you're going to do one thing, but you might not realize what that means because it's pretty complicated. That's number one. And number two, when you're submitting evidence, think outside the box. Think about anything that you can have that shows about you caring about each other, that you're financially responsible with one another. Anything that you have that it could be anything. And if you have an attorney, I always tell clients, just show me it. I'll know right away, like, oh, this is good, this isn't good. I've submitted all sorts of crazy things. It was my first hamster, but like I said, I've done cats before and dogs. I think a horse once too. So yeah, that is all today for notable approvals. Don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and LinkedIn so you don't miss any lives. And tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, join myself and attorneys Alana and Lori, who will be facing off in episode 4 of our game show, Are You Smarter Than a Naturalized Citizen? Tune in to see if the naturalized citizen will beat the American-born citizen. It's going to be great fun, and it's a great way if you're practicing for your naturalization test to hear some of the questions and answers and get familiar with it and learn a little about our great country. And if you need anything, any legal assistance, our contact information has been scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So thank you all for watching. We hope to see you tonight and have a great day.